The book that I'm going to review is called To Serve with Love. It's written by a British American national called E.R. Braithwaite. Uh, there's also a movie made in the I think, early 60s. So this book is basically written in 40s, early 40s and early 70s. Sorry, early 40s and early 50s. So the book deals about the autobiographical story of Mr. E.R. Braithwaite, who, goes on after he retires from Royal Air Force. He goes on after the World War. He goes on and joins a school as a teacher. So there are three things that he deals with in this book. It's a fictional book. It's a autobiographical fiction. Okay, it's not completely true. It's not completely fiction. So it's semi-autobiographical, you can say. So he deals with three things in the book. One thing is about him being a black person. The second thing is the way people, the way teachers act and the way teachers take up responsibility of students. And the third thing is about how students, uh, what influences students to be the way they are. In this story, in this book, uh, his students were like one of the worst students, not the best students, okay, not the toppers, not the good students or the average, but his students are like one of the worst students you can ever have. So the students that he's speaking about in his book, in the opening chapter, he gives us slight uh, introduction to what kind of student he has. So he starts his story from his journey, when he drops down uh, in the city, East London. He's heard about East London. He's heard about many famous poets and writers that have come up from this part of the country, and he's very excited to be in that part of the country. And when he goes there, he sees that you know half of the city is destroyed by bombs, and there are many problems that people are facing. And he gives a very interesting account of how he goes and what happens in the past when he's going to his destination, the school, and he reaches there. So the people living there are suffering from the recent wars, and there are many of the people are frustrated. They have no money, they have no jobs. A lot of people have lost their jobs or lives. And then he goes on into the school, and then he starts narrating what happens and his first impressions about the students. So the students are like one of the worst students. They are many of the teachers in later part of the story refer to refer to the students as grown-up men and women, because they are actually grown-up men and women who have failed and who have stayed on in school. And one of the principal is a very kind person. He gives a short account of why these students are the way they are. So he goes on to tell about um, you know the things that the principal, in a monologue kind of thing, he goes on to tell and explain, Mr. Braithwaite, that these students are facing so many issues. They're facing so many problems at home. The parents are suffering. They have no jobs. They are addicted to stuff, alcohol, or something else. So these students come from this background, and that's why um, they are behaving in the way they are. So throughout the book, the students are very resistant. They are resisting um, the their teacher. And yeah, Bertavete, he was BS. He holds a BSc, and he's interested in electronics, and he's very interested in he was a army man, okay, Air Force pilot. But then when the war is over, he has to come back and get into a job somewhere. So when he goes on into the school, you know, he he has no experience. He has no experience about how to teach the students. He has no experience about the kind of students he'll be facing, the kind of colleagues he'll be facing. He was in the army. He was in the army military, you see, they are very well disciplined. They don't speak out of turn. They don't speak louder. They don't speak anything. They are very well disciplined, and he comes from that kind of background. And here he what he sees is like completely opposite of what he has faced in the army. And he faces a lot of difficulties, but there are a few of his colleagues who helps him. And they teach, he learns on the job how to teach students. So in the beginning, he mentions that his experience in there's a whole chapter dedicated to his experience in the Air Force. It not very deep. He's not sharing any stories about what happened in the Air Force or anything, or in the war, nothing. But he tells them that for the 6 years that he served in the Royal Air Force of the Britain, he had forgotten that he had forgotten the color of his skin. So the people, respected everyone else in the army, outside the Air Force, wherever he goes, to pubs, to schools, to colleges, to uh, on the road, across, wherever he goes, people see his uniform and they respect him. So he forgets that he was a black person. If he has forgotten that, black people are persecuted, black people are shamed, black people are not given equal rights. He has forgotten everything. And when he retires, from when he finishes his commission at the Royal Air Force, he goes to the division office where they give jobs. He has to get a job and live his normal life as well now, after he has completed his tenure at the Royal Air Force. So when he does that, the office is very happy to have him there. These people at the office are all ex-army people, so they respect him, and they say that you have three options, you have three interviews scheduled so and so dates. So these are the letters, go and have a happy life. So they talk to him, and he tells them that he's very interested in electronics. And while he was in the Air Force, he read a lot of books about electronics, because in the early 40s and 50s, this was booming, electronic was booming. And he kept himself knowledgeable. He learned a lot of stuff, magazines and stuff. And when the division office hears that he has interest in electronics, they say, okay, we have three jobs for you. And he is given letters of invitation where he has to go and give the interviews. So he goes there. One of the experiences he narrates, he goes there and he sits there. When he enters the office building, the receptionist, she sees him, and he goes to the receptionist and he says, that my name is Braithwaite, and I'm here for an interview. And the moment she hears his name, he opens her notebook, he opens her diary, and she cross checks his name. His name is there. And she is, visibly uncomfortable, you know, or slightly disgusted kind of feeling. And she says, okay, please wait a minute, let me call. And she picks up the phones and she calls. She calls and she places her hand over the microphone and she speaks. You know, in a way, she doesn't want Mr. Braithwaite to hear what she's speaking. And then after a few minutes, she says, after a few moments of talking uh, to people on the other end of the phone, she says that, please be seated and we'll call you soon. And then she and then he's called into the interview room. There are three people seated there, and they shake hands with him. Sits there, and he's army retired, so he has this composure about him. He has this personality about him, and he has dressed in his best dresses, best suit, and made himself very presentable. And he talks with the people. They ask him about his previous job. They ask him about the basics of electronics and all those things. And they ask him, and then he gives them all the answers that they are expecting, because he has already done his homework and he has all the answers to their questions. And when after a after a long time, after a long time of asking questions and discussing about among themselves, they say that, Mr. Bedevere, you are really knowledgeable, you're really nice, but uh, unfortunately, uh, you are the perfect fit for this job. But unfortunately, there are white people who are in, subordinate positions to the position that you have applied. So we cannot give you this job, and we don't want to give you other jobs that are subordinate to this job because you are so talented. So that will be a, disrespect to you and your knowledge and your experience. So we don't want to give you that job as well, and we don't want to give you this job, as there are white people who will feel bad if we give you this job. So this is like a uh, glass shattering moment for our author. He says, suddenly after 6 years of being respected, 6 years of being treated warmly by people, he is shattered, and he's like completely uh, um, in a shock, and he goes back to his home, to his friends where he's living with and then he decides that uh, he's shocked, and then he while going back, he calls, he goes to a public phone, payphone, and he makes another two calls to the other two companies that had given him letter of invitations, who had called him, who had invited him to give an interview. So he calls them and he says that, my name is Ia Braithwaite, and I am a black person. Would you offer me a job? I was invited for this position. And so they say that suddenly both of the calls, suddenly, he says in the book that miraculously both of the positions were already filled, and they were hoping to write me soon, because this is pre email, pre, text messaging and stuff. So uh, even mails, even letters used to take at least 2 days, 3 days to reach. So they say that they were thinking of writing to him, but they couldn't, and they apologize for you know the inconvenience. So suddenly he has this mirror shattering moment, glass shattering moment, and he comes back to reality. He goes back to the divisional office, and he says, what should I do? So they says, okay, fine. There's this school in East London. If any of you might have heard the word Cockney. It's a dialect that people speak there. It's not very rich country, rich part of the country, but very poor people live and they have their own dialect and stuff. Um, so he's given there, so he has no choice. He has to make a living, he has to do a job, he has to earn. And he writes that he had to accept this job because of the imminent need to eat. So if he doesn't have money, obviously he's gonna starve. So he goes there and he faces these unruly students that he goes on to teach for about a year. And he 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 shares his experiences in the whole book. So the method that he uses to teach people, to teach the students over there, is very basic. He doesn't do many things. He just uses music, and whatever the students love, he teaches them. He makes them believe that they can learn. He gives them that confidence. And although he's a black person and the other students are white, they start to respect him over time, not quickly. They try everything to resist his teaching and his methods, but eventually they fall for him, and they start uh, uh, participating in what he has to teach to them. So this was a short review of this. I had read this book over uh, way back in 2011 and 12. Uh, I was actually a trainer back then. I was a teacher. I used to teach computers and stuff. And I bought this book. It's a 1970s print, and I bought it in Hyderabad, just a little while from you know Charminar. There used to be a guy, a very young kid, maybe back then he was 12 years, 13 years old. So he used to sell secondhand books, and even today I love buying secondhand books, although I'm not reading as many books as I used to. So I love buying secondhand books because they have this, the smell, the story, the something special about them. So I love having secondhand books, and this is one of the books that I bought from from a second-hand store. So recently, the reason why I decided to review this book on in this month is we had Teachers' Day recently, uh, and it was, very fortunate to have. It's, recently it was Teachers' Day, and also we had the latest NEP, that is new education policy, has been updated. So this book gives an idea of what kind of method teachers must or can employ, and this is way back written in, early 40s. So this is, pre Tare Zameen Par or Three Idiots. So, and now, from my experience as a teacher, I don't teach anymore, but I do take classes once in a while, seminars and uh, training programs once in a while. So I have also faced these issues with students, where students don't want to learn. They don't want to learn a lot of things, for a lot of reasons. So it gave me an insight. I have had the experience of, having the best teachers and the worst teachers, having the best student, colleagues, classmates, and also the worst classmates. So it gave me an another, uh, facet of education. We always talk about education, in the United States the education is so good, in Britain the education is so good, in Holland and in Sweden and other countries it's so good. But we often, don't know the stories, the actual stories of what is going on inside these countries. And there are many, many books written about the, education systems uh, of these countries. So I think that's all from my side today. And I am actually standing outside and doing this review. I was invited to a program and I have to finish soon. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. I have another 5 minutes, and then I have to go.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Firstly, you presented really nicely. So I was like, it was not actually talking about a book review, but it was talking about the experience of reading itself and also holding the book in my hand. So that was very nice.
Yes, yes.
You gave the entire experience. So I really liked that. Uh,
Thank you.
I want to actually ask you about something. The thing
Yeah.
is, I've recently been reading about the Black movement, and I recently came upon this new book which was written by Trevor Noah, the comedian
Hmm.
who who's on the
Yes,
Daily
yes, I
Show.
know.
So he
Yes, yes.
actually wrote this book titled "Born a Crime." So it's based on one of the what is that? The names of one of his stand-up shows. The first show that he did
Hmm.
in the public, it's called "Born a Crime," and it is one of his most famous jokes. And he writes his memoirs as a boy who was born of mixed origin, in the sense his mom is black, but his father was white.
Father was a white person. Yes.
So when he was growing up in South Africa, where there was apartheid, so he talks
Hmm.
about all of his experiences. And for me, it reminded me of that book. So where he actually speaks about how he was discriminated against because he was neither black nor white. So the thing what I'm talking about is recently I also saw that Denzel Washington, the Black American actor.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, Afro American actor. So when Denzel Washington was was nominated for many awards and he also won the Oscars. At some
Hmm.
point of time, they started referring to him as the Black American actor or the African American actor, to which he got
Hmm.
really a little angry about, because he didn't assume himself to be a Black American or African American, but he only assumed himself to be an actor. So,
Yeah.
on one side, I read Trevor Noah, he speaks about being discriminated against for being black. On the other side,
Hmm.
even Denzel Washington, even though he was very successful as an actor, he was taken aback when somebody called him black. So, at
Hmm.
this point of time, I want to know what you think about this discrimination issue that you presented from the book. So, So, do you think
So,
this discrimination is something that can be tackled with more rights to these people who are discriminated against, or it should be equality that we want, not some kind of supremacy?
mhm. Okay. Thank you, Abhinav, right? Thank you, Abhinav, for this question. And, you know, uh, there's always this thing about people, you, me, or anyone, everyone. There's always this discrimination. You can't fight it. You can't run away from it. No matter what you do, you're black. They discriminate against you. You're a yellow person. A Chinese person. They discriminate. You're Indian. You're discriminated. You're in within India. You are something. There's always this thing that we try to divide ourselves. Okay, this, me, this, that, and even the only thing that is your own is your family. Anything apart from your family is different, and people have always tried to fight and resist and try to name shame them or bully them, no matter what, your neighbors, your uncles and your aunties. So there will always be this discrimination, even if the whole world was a single color, brown, red, white, whatever the color might be. Even if everyone was the same color, we will face the same thing. you know like, for example, I have a beard. Okay, there are people who don't like people with beards. There are people who don't like tall people. There are people who don't like short people, and they are made to suffer because of this. So there's always going to be this. So one thing that we can do to remove this kind of apartheid or remove this kind of discrimination, division, is to just educate ourselves, that everyone, to believe that everyone is different. No one is the same. I am I and you are you. That's why we are different. And a lot of people face you know discrimination. A lot of people have written about it. A lot of people have not written about it. People have been killed based on these set of beliefs. Recently we have seen the kind of Black Lives Matter movement that happened in the United States. The person was killed just because he was a black, or just because he was a criminal. We don't know the whole truth, but still people have been killed because of these beliefs. One thing that we need to do is, the older generation, they're gone. Okay, you, me, are very old, and we can't change. But the younger generation, they need, like you asked, if these people, this can be solved by giving them special status. Yes, special status is improved, is good. Reservations, having people to make them to sit with a person who has been discriminated. So if I'm a white person, if I'm sitting with a black person 10 years in my school life, I'm going to respect him. He's going to be my friend. So that's what, in India, it's been going on. The government, the rules, the regulation, the law, the Constitution of India makes it, clear that everyone is equal, and everyone has to sit, no matter what kind of person you are. You have to sit with a black person. You have to sit with a person who is, whatever he might be. Including in India, there are some black people. And recently, about a few months ago, I was watching these videos and reading about these people. I used to run a book show for African people, and it was actually an international show. We used to have about 300 members, and a lot of people came from Africa, South Africa, Nigeria, West Africa, Ghana, and these countries. So I had reviewed this book. This was in 2018, I think, 2017 to 18. I ran this show online, and a lot of people used to come, and it's very strange that um, we all have these beliefs, and the kind of pressure and the kind of uh, criminal acts these people are facing. Even in India, I was searching, and one of the Nigerian person told me that uh, if there is no country in the world, there is no black people. And I was like taken aback. I said, no, India doesn't has any black people. And then I went on internet and I started to search. We have some black people in Karnataka, about 20,000 black people living in Karnataka for centuries. There is a huge population in Gujarat, near the Ghar, near one of the forests. And I was surprised to know that black people had their own Nawab, about 200 years back. So uh, it's been going on, and I was watching this video where a couple of black people, these black people, black Indians or Afro Indians, are called Siddhis in India. So these Siddhis were being trained by government of India in sports. The Sports Academy of India was training them so that they could get better results in the Olympics, because in early 70s and early 60s, everyone across across the world, the maximum number of gold medals were being won by black people. So Indian government back in 70s and 80s, they thought that, oh, we have about 100,000 people in India who are from this ancestry, so let's make use of them. And they started to teach them, but eventually things didn't work as the way they were supposed to work. So one of the black trainers, he works in Mumbai. He's an Indian. His parents have been Indian, and for sixth generation, I think, he's been an Indian. And he still says that in the Mumbai local, people call him all sorts of names. So unless we are going to sit on the same table, eat from the uh, same plate, this is not going to end. I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Imran, if you have time, I want to ask one question.
Yes,
Also,
please.
okay. So, adding to the discussion what you had between Abhinav and you, uh,
Hmm.
this discrimination, is it in the culture or is it biological? And I meant, is it psychological, or we have been
Hmm.
taught to discriminate at every part of our point?
I have already answered this question. It's psychological, it's within us. No matter who you are, okay, the color of skin is just a big part of discrimination. The religion is big part of the discrimination. The caste that we are, is a big discrimination. um, the part of city that you live is a part of big discrimination. But they are always, I told you, you are you and I am I. So when I say I'm already dividing. So people have been dividing other people for no reasons. Like for example, in Karnataka, we are Kannadigas. Okay, I've been born here. My ancestors were from Andhra, but so this is my for two generations, two generations, we have been living here. So when I go back to Bangalore, okay, I'm a Kannadiga. I speak Kannada. I'm a Kannadiga. I have been born here. I have lived my life here. But when I go there, we are discriminated, right? So when someone from North India comes here, we respect them. But when someone from South India goes there, what do they call us? They call us some name. Okay, they call based on our skin color, based on or the language we speak. So there are so many, people have devised so many reasons to discriminate, to divide us all. And I love reading about languages. Okay, so let me just tell you, Rashmi, I speak Hindi. What language do you speak?
Kannada.
You speak Kannada at home.
Yeah.
Right? See, uh, people discriminate us, okay, not Kannadigas, from Kalburgi, from Gulbarga. When we go and speak in our Kannada in Bangalore, we are, it's a different feeling. People laugh at us. Hindi, government of India says that there are about 400 different languages that are similar to Hindi, but people from north speak different language. So people have found different ways. Uh, if I speak Hindi or Urdu, okay, I speak Urdu, that is Dakkani, that is Hyderabadi, and if I go and speak in this language in some other part of India, I am a different person. So they have laughed at our language. So it's psychological. It's a thing that um, keeps us different, I think. It's always have been there, no matter what you do. The only reason that I see, the only way I see, is to have people of all origins sit in a single place and have food with them, and only then we can truly avoid these kind of discriminations.
Thanks, Imran.
So if you have any more questions, you can ask me. I have another 5 minutes. I think I can be here with you guys. if you have any question related to education, that would be really good, because discrimination, it's always been there, but education is something we can solve and we can work towards, getting better.
Yeah. So actually, this, this book also reminds me of another book which I recently read. It's not directly related, but indirectly it's related. There's this Nobel Prize winning author, J.M. Coetzee. He's of South
Hmm.
African origin. And he's South African, but he's not a black person. He's a white South African. So at the time of apartheid, he fled South Africa because, I mean, the remaining whites over there were not, I mean, welcome anymore, or not really welcome.
Yes,
So
yes.
uh, I mean, that's also an interesting angle. I mean, looking at that experience from from the point of view of someone who's South African, but he's a white person and who doesn't agree with apartheid or discrimination. Uh,
Yes.
and But he has to live with the guilt of what his forefathers have done. And So there's an interesting novel, kind of semi-autobiographical novel that he wrote. It's called Youth. It's about this young person, this young author going and trying to settle in the UK and trying to pursue his passion for poetry, philosophy over there. But at the end, he ends up doing some computer science job over there, just
Hmm.
to survive. And it's basically about. I think Kurtze in general is really good about this. And there was also recently a movie made about on this, Waiting for the Barbarians, which is based on upon another
Hmm.
one of Kurtz's books. Uh,
Okay.
he really writes a lot about this South African context and the apartheid. So actually, the kind of story that you were mentioning, it is of a black person trying to make his way around in the UK, right?
Yes, yes.
This is kind of an opposite story, where you have a white person. I mean, in almost the same setting, a white person from this, from a South African origin. So of course he's not, purely white in that sense, and he's also discriminated against over there,
Hmm.
and he's trying to, find a place for himself in that society.
Yes,
So
yes,
this is
yes.
an interesting parallel.
Yes, that's an interesting parallel that you have showed us. So I know a few African people. They speak the African language, uh, and it's different from. It's not. It's a language that European people who moved to Africa or South Africa specifically speak. And I have known a few of these people, and like you said, they even today they face some issues from the black community, and that is basically because, like you said, you used a very good term, okay, the sense of the forefathers. So it will always happen. It's happening in India right now. Someone had done something about 1,000 years back, and the progeny, 1,000 years later, is being punished for that. So it happens there. It has happened here. The sense, or the situations are same, the people are different, the reasons are different, but the situation end up the same way. Someone is trying to push someone down, and black people, or white people, or Indian people. So it always happens. And can you put down the name of this book so that uh, I can
Yeah,
check it later on.
yeah, sure. Just typing it.
Manvit, I just had one point actually. Thank you so much. This
Yes.
was quite insightful for me. So I was just trying to relate how do we kind of get on with the discrimination in the classroom as dispositions. I remember I was watching a documentary by a teacher, famous teacher Jane Elliott, who was doing this
Mhm.
experiment on brown eyes, the students with the brown eyes and the blue eyes in the classroom, and she was trying to kind
Yes.
of have you seen that video?
No, I haven't.
अच्छा ठीक है. It's very interesting the way the teacher practices some exercises in the classroom to kind of dispel these kind of discrimination and the racism that exists in the classroom. I'm sharing that video.
Mhm.
It's by Jane Elliott. That is also very interesting.
Please share it in the group so that we
Yeah,
can
yeah, sure, sure.
check it out later on as well, because this
Yeah, definitely.
when the program ends, this the chat goes.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Well, if there is no more questions, we shall go for the next review.
Mhm. Okay, so I'd like to give some closing comments, and then I haven't called, so I have to go as well. So
Yeah,
see
sure.
what Khamarbai said, okay, about brown eyes and blue eyes. So we try to discriminate based on the color of our eye. Forget about the whole skin. I have seen this kind of discrimination in my school. We used to have two girls who had gray eyes, and everyone used to call them cat eyes, billi ke aankh wali. So eventually, people started to call them cats. So this kind of thing happens. There is no way we can end this, but we can always have, try to have an open mind and accept everyone, people of different colors or eyes or hairs. Hair color is also a very important thing. Imagine someone in your class, in your school, in your workplace having red hair, and majority of the people having just the normal black hair or the brown, magenta or whatever color uh, is common in India. So they are, you know and I knew a person who had this skin issue, and half of her body was brown, and the rest of her half of her body is very pale in color. So she was also discriminated based on her skin color. So she didn't feel belong to any kind of color. She's an Indian, and she doesn't, it all happens. So the best way is to have an open mind and accept everyone. So that's all. And uh, that's all from my side. Thank you, guys.